if the Ottoman Empire had never existed? Imagine this. No sultans sipping coffee in palaces, no janissaries chasing enemies with crooked sabers, and, hold on to your chairs, no Istanbul as we know it. The paradox is that we are used to thinking of the Ottomans as the kings of the Middle East who kept half the world in suspense. But what if their story had simply not begun? Would we be drinking tea instead of coffee now? Would European kings have chased spices without intermediaries and turbans? And most importantly, would we have that famous Turkish TV series about Suleiman, which even historians laugh at? This topic is a real treasure for those who like to dig into history and ask what if. The Ottoman Empire existed for 6 centuries, redrew the map of the world, made Europe tremble, and then quietly retired, leaving us with a bunch of legends and a slightly confusing geography. But imagine that in the 13th century, a nomad named Osman, instead of founding an empire, simply got lost in the steppes of Anatolia. Or say his horse was stolen and he decided, fuck it, I'd rather herd sheep. The irony is that one bad day could have changed everything, from the borders of countries to what we call baklava. And this is not just another what could have been story. It's a chance to look into an alternative world where history took a different path. And believe me, there's something to see there. Why is it interesting? Because the Ottomans are not just an empire, they are a whole tangle of events that tied Europe, Asia, and Africa into one big historical knot. Without them, everything might have fallen apart differently. Wars, trade, even locum coffee, everything is in question. It's also an opportunity to laugh at how serious kings and generals could panic without the usual Ottoman headache. So pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea if you're in the spirit of alternative history, and get ready for a story you won't be able to put down. We are going to walk through a world where the Ottoman Empire did not exist, and I promise it will be fun, a little strange, and very exciting. Come on, friends, history is waiting. Translated with deepl.com, free version. So let's go back to the 13th century. In real history, a certain Ottoman, the son of a nomad, unites the tribes in Anatolia and lays the foundation for the future empire. But let's imagine that this did not happen. Let's say that Osman had a quarrel with his neighbors, his camp was looted, and he gave up. Oh well, I'll just go back to selling wool. Or even better, he was simply not noticed, and the nomadic tribes remained scattered. No sultanate, no campaigns, no palaces with harems. What was going on then? Without the Ottoman Empire, Byzantium, which in reality was living out its last days, gets an unexpected chance. In the 1300s, Constantinople did not fall in 1453 as we are used to, but held on for a couple more centuries. But do not rush to rejoice for the Byzantines. They were not masters of stability. The emperors, who loved intrigue more than reforms, continued to quarrel with each other, and Byzantium became a kind of sick uncle of Europe, weak but stubborn. The Balkans, which in reality became Ottoman, here break up into dozens of small principalities. Imagine Serbs, Bulgarians, and Greeks fighting endlessly for every piece of land. The irony is that without the Ottoman bulldozer, Europe does not have a common enemy to unite against, and instead drowns in local squabbles. And what about Vienna? In reality, the Ottomans tried to take it twice, frightening the whole of Europe. At the same time, the Habsburgs, having no Ottoman threat, focus on France and the Holy Roman Empire. Instead of majestic battles with the Janissaries, we see endless European wars of succession. Kings who in reality trembled at the word sultan are now fighting among themselves for every castle. It's funny to imagine an Austrian duke complaining, "If only there was one decent enemy, not these French fashionistas." Without the Ottomans in the Middle East, the power vacuum is being filled by other players. The Mamluks, who in reality controlled Egypt and Syria, are becoming the main force here. But they are not as ambitious as the Ottomans and are more interested in trade than conquest. Mecca and Medina remain under their control, but without Ottoman unity, Arab tribes are constantly rebelling. Persia, which in reality was held back by the Ottomans, flourishes under Safavid rule and advances as far as Mesopotamia. Imagine a Shiite empire that dictates the fashion for carpets and poetry, but lacks the Ottoman flair for organization. The irony is that without the Ottomans, the Middle East becomes a colorful quilt of small states, where each sheikh dreams of his own palace, but no one can agree. The spice trade, which in reality went through the Ottomans, is chaotic here. Europeans, Portuguese, Venetians try to get to India directly, but without Ottoman mediation, prices skyrocket and caravan routes become dangerous. Imagine a Venetian merchant grumbling, "If only there was a sultan to organize everything, not these bandits on camels." In reality, the Ottomans were masters of adaptation. They took gunpowder from the Chinese, guns from the Europeans, and built a fleet that made the Mediterranean tremble. Without them, technology spreads more slowly. Byzantium, although surviving, is in no hurry to share knowledge, and the Mamluks love gold more than innovation. Europe, fragmented by wars, has no incentive for the rapid progress that the Ottoman threat provided. Guns appear later, the navy develops more slowly, and even the printing press, which in reality reached the Ottomans late, wanders around Europe even longer here. Culture is also changing. Without Ottoman palaces and mosques, such as Hagia Sophia, Constantinople remains Christian, but poorer. Turkish coffee? Forget it. Its place is taken by some herbal decoction that makes Europeans cringe. And baklava? It might have been invented by the Persians, but they would have called it something else, like sweet rug. It's funny to imagine the French King Louis demanding more of that Persian dessert, because Ottoman cuisine simply does not exist. Let's move forward a few centuries. By the 1700s, Europe was a tangle of small states that had never united against a common enemy. The colonization of the Americas is slower because Spain and Portugal have no competition with the Ottoman fleet, and thus no hurry. Russia, which in reality fought the Ottomans for the Black Sea, focuses on Siberia, but without the Crimean Wars, it is developing slowly. The Middle East is a mosaic of states where Persians, Mamluks, and Arabs share influence, but none of them reaches Ottoman greatness. And what about us? Without Ottoman pressure, the Renaissance in Europe might have been delayed, and the Industrial Revolution would have come late. Imagine a world where coffee is exotic, spices are a luxury, and the Balkans are eternal chaos. The irony is that the Ottomans, whom we used to consider a problem, could have been the glue that held history together. What about global trade? In reality, the Ottomans controlled the key routes between Asia and Europe, forcing the Venetians and Genoese to pay fabulous amounts of money for pepper and silk. Without them, these routes become no man's land and real chaos begins. The Portuguese, who in reality rushed to find a roundabout way to India through Africa, have no such incentive here. There is no Ottoman border, so Vasco da Gama might have remained a fisherman. Instead, small merchants from Persia, Mamluks, and even nomads from Central Asia are trying to grab a piece of the pie. Imagine a European aristocrat waiting for his peppercorns and being delivered camel's milk with an apology. The spices were lost somewhere in the desert. The irony is that without the Ottoman iron hand, trade becomes not an organized highway, but a bazaar where everyone shouts but no one listens. Without the Ottomans, the religious map of the world also looks different. In reality, the sultans became caliphs, uniting the Muslim world under their banner. Here, however, the caliphate remains weak and fragmented. The Mamluks hold Egypt but lack the charisma of the sultans, and the Persians promote Shi'ism, which without the Ottoman opposition has no clear enemy. In Europe, the Catholic Church, not having the Ottoman threat as a unifying factor, is losing influence more slowly, but it is not in a hurry to reform. Imagine the Pope complaining, "If only there was one sultan to scare the flock, but everyone sleeps through my sermons." The Crusades, which in reality faded away before the arrival of the Ottomans, could have lasted longer here, but without much success, the Mamluks would have fought back, and the Byzantines would have just watched with popcorn. It's funny, but without the Ottomans, the spiritual world looks like an orchestra without a conductor. So what do we have? A world without the Ottoman Empire is a Europe that gnaws at itself, a Middle East where every sheikh dreams of his own throne, and a history that weaves slower than a caravan without camels. Byzantium lives to a ripe old age, but it doesn't impress. Mamluks trade, Persians write poetry, and European kings fight over castles instead of trembling at the hands of janissaries. No sultans, no coffee in palaces, no mosques eclipsing cathedrals. And you know what? Maybe we'd still be drinking herbal tea and complaining that spices have gone up in price again. This alternate history shows how one empire could keep the world on its toes. Without the Ottomans, Europe would not have received the impetus that made it run forward, and the Middle East would not have become so diverse, but it would not have found unity. Just imagine, we could live in a world where Constantinople is a sleepy town and baklava is called Persian cake. It's funny, but a little sad, isn't it? The Ottomans may have been a headache for many, but without them, history looks like a party where no one knows who is in charge of the music. Now think about our real world. We are used to thinking of it as robust. But what if a nomad in the 13th century had simply lost his horse? Everything could have gone differently from borders to what we eat for breakfast. This fragility of history is like a cup of coffee. You hold it carefully because you know it can spill. The irony is that the Ottomans, whom we often scold in textbooks, may have been the ones who prevented the world from crumbling before its time. If you enjoyed pondering such what-ifs, please like this video. It's a sign that you're ready for new historical adventures. And subscribe, because there are many more stories ahead that you won't be able to put down. Let's figure out together how history could come back. In the meantime, pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea if you've already felt yourself in a world without Ottomans. See you in the next story.